On today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to differentiate yourself in a crowded marketplace when we're prospecting new business. I have here a...
Don't even say that. Do not.
I have a 15-year veteran of new business acquisition specialist, Justin Maines. Justin, let's chat about it, man. How do we differentiate ourselves? What do brokers in the marketplace have to do today to stand out when they're prospecting? You know, these prospects are getting, we hear it all the time, 10, 15 calls a day, 20 emails, 10 LinkedIn messages all the time. It's kind of, I always think of it this way. It's, when you get you go to like a marina or a fishing marina and you throw in that little fish food.
Oh yeah.
And like all those carp, is it carp? Is that the...
There's a lot of different, I think all fish attack.
They they are just trying to get that
I like
fish.
Piranhas.
Piranhas, there you go. So let's go over a couple things that, that are good for the audience to hear and understand about ways that you can differentiate yourself.
Yeah, this is, I do think this is a hot topic because we're in a soft market. And what that means, if you're not familiar with the industry, is, there's, plenty of capacity, there's plenty of trucks, but there's not as many loads. So shippers' needs are taken care of. They're working with carriers. They're not entertaining, new partners. They're not, they don't need they're not like dying for a broker.
Yeah.
So closing business is more difficult than ever.
Right.
When it's tight, it's complete opposite. Shippers need us. So
supply and demand.
Correct. Exactly. So we're in a very loose market, soft market. So these shippers are getting bombarded by calls, emails, texts, you name it. They're getting it. So when they get a sales call, and you're hearing it more now, is this a sales call? Mm-hmm. Is this a sales call? Mm-hmm. Like, absolutely. But no, it depends on how you look at it. But you're hearing that a lot because
build that trust early.
Oh yeah. They're getting them so often. So the question is, how do you differentiate yourself from the next 50 people calling that same contact later that week?
Yeah.
And there's a number of things, and I think there's a lot of things that we still miss as a team, but I'm pretty confident the competition is doing as well.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you have 8 to 12 seconds, 8 to 15 seconds to catch that prospect's attention.
Yeah.
And you're going to do that by doing your homework. Who are you? Where are you calling from? Why are you calling? And then what do you know about them? Uh-huh. You have roughly 10 to 12 seconds to do that.
Sure.
So match their energy. Make sure that you're not calling with the same monotonous low energy voice.
Yeah.
And no generic BS when you open it up.
What about like a script? What if you just have like, my name is, I work for, and you're super monotone on the call.
You're gonna hear dial tone.
Yeah.
Because you won't
get hung up on pretty quick.
Yeah. So, but at the end of the day, like, you have that time to even get their interest, and you better have a solid question that you did your homework to ask. And from there, you're just listening.
Right.
There's technology out there that can measure how often, or like on one call, let's say a 5-minute call, of that time, how much are you talking and how much are you actually listening? Mm-hmm. So if you're talking 90% of the time, you're listening 10, you're not going to know shit about that prospect.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if they're still on the phone after 5 minutes.
Sure.
But you should be asking, open-ended questions that make them think. And you're going to get honest answers.
Yeah.
If you're asking those generic questions, how many full truckloads do you have?
Right.
How many do you move per week? You're going to get very short answers, and the conversation's not going to last. So go ahead.
Well, and they can. I mean, to me, anytime you hear a prospect on the phone and they hear that question, automatically they know what is when you make that call and they answer and say, "Hey, my name's Derek. How can I help you?" What do we do then?
Derek, and there's a number of things, but
Sure.
I am very targeted with who I approach.
Yeah.
And we have a smaller pool of prospects that we pursue because we want that laser focus on those prospects because they fit the client profile that we're trying to work with.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, I do a lot of food and beverage.
Yeah, food and beverage. Yeah.
So I connect the dots.
Yeah.
And I'm working, different contexts, seeing who's connected to who.
You mean like on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, and I have those conversations with people I have relationships with.
Yeah.
Hey, I saw that you used to work here. Do you know so-and-so? Who would I speak with? So I try to connect the dots before I even call, because it's immediately going to warm up the call.
Yeah. And from what I'm hearing, man, I think, it sounds like you have a game plan before you are calling this potential prospect.
Yes.
How long are you spending on this, we'll call it game plan?
I would say anywhere between 30 to 2 minutes maybe.
Yeah, so not a long time.
No.
And now we're going in and we're making this call to the similar type of prospect, food and beverage manufacturer, and then what? What happens next?
I'm trying to pique their interest enough in my opening to stay on the phone with me.
Okay.
So you mentioned, hey, I'm Derek Justin with Veritas Logistics. I'm gonna keep this super quick. I saw that you're connected with so-and-so. I reached out to him about you.
Yeah.
He said that you may need this, this, and this.
Yeah.
I'm curious to learn more about ABC.
Nice.
Whatever it may be.
I think, one thing I love coaching, especially with the call coaching stuff, like I enjoy that more than I probably should. But I always hear, new reps or new salespeople, they'll ask, the guy says, "My name's Derek, how can I help you?" And the first thing they say is, "Derek, how are you doing today?" And God, man, I wish we could alleviate that or get rid of that.
Who you are. Yeah.
Right. Well, I think it screams salesperson. All right, what do you want, man?
Yep.
Now you've just lost their interest.
Yep.
It's like gone off a cliff, and it's hard to recover from that.
Yep.
So I love that approach when you're saying, "Derek, I spoke with this person. I saw that you were connected on LinkedIn. How do you approach the mid-mile management today, going from, your manufacturing facility into key distributors or whatever the scenario is?"
Correct.
So what are some more ways? Like we went over the opening, you're bringing up the client relevant fact. What happens next?
How are you going to show them that you've done your homework?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I'm name dropping, so I'm working with a lot of your competitors.
Yeah.
Here are their challenges.
Yeah.
Are these similar challenges that you're facing today? And here's how we solve those challenges. So there's a lot of synergies between these companies,
right,
especially in food and bev.
Yeah.
So I will know a handful of facts about them prior to going into that call. Mm-hmm. And if I don't, I'm calling lower level, maybe the gatekeeper, or, I call it 3 up, 3 down, 3 over, where I'm gaining intel from contacts as my homework that I can then leverage with the main decision maker.
Yeah.
Because if I know those things and I've talked to every single person around him and I know all their pain points, I understand their needs, and now I have a solution I can bring to the table that brings true value.
Yeah.
If you cannot bring value to these prospects, why would they even work with you?
They're not, especially in this market when it's so soft and they're getting so many calls per day. I truly don't think, they don't have a need, but if you can pique their interest enough to set up a virtual call or get them some sort of familiarity, I think you can have a leg up. One thing you mentioned, and I love this, but even when you call the gate, say you don't have a ton of information and there's potential there, calling that gatekeeper and doing some discovery where you're, learning a little bit more about the decision maker and who they use, if they're using brokers or, the gatekeepers, I feel like know more than they lead on.
Yep.
Right. They, it's funny. We call these gatekeepers and they're instructed, or I feel like they have like what the hell's that called? A laminated sheet. Yeah. It's a laminated sheet that says like, "Oh, this guy's asking for transportation to logistics. That's
this.
John Smith. Say this," right? Yeah. It's like transportation logistics script. The gatekeeper pulls it up and says, "Let me get you back to his voicemail." Yep. Right? I feel like that happens all the time. But the more we can dig in and try to find out that discovery piece, I love that, because so many people will take that, right? The gatekeeper will say, "Oh, that's John Smith, and let me get you back there." Zoop.
Yep.
And now there's nothing really gained from that, I don't feel like, right? So I think that there is some value in learning more from the gatekeeper or digging in there to figure out what that is. What are some other ways that we can stand out or be different than the 20 other people that are calling them every day?
Yes, and I do think this boils down to the homework and what you know about them, because if there's one thing I hope listeners take away is, as a small company, even if you're large, if you're maybe a TQL, CH Robinson, they might buy from you because of your name and your brand and your capabilities. But if you're that mid-size or smaller brokerage, these companies are not going to buy because you have a really cool TMS,
right?
Or you have a ton of good carriers in their market,
in their area,
or whatever you want to try pitching them that they don't care about. They will buy from you because you are you. There's no other reason why. And if they don't like you, or they think you're kind of a cheese dick and they don't really like talking to you, they're not going to buy from you either. So be a person, listen, do a little homework, find out what they're interested in, get a little creepy on Facebook. I don't know, but get weird.
I love this part.
So but do your homework and be a person when you call that contact, because they're going to buy from you. Also, if you bring a genuine curiosity to that conversation and truly understand their needs, my number one goal is to make their lives easier.
Right.
Whether he's a VP of transportation or I'm working with a logistics coordinator that just gets crushed every day with fallouts. My number one job is to make their jobs easier. And if I could do that, I give them time back. I start to know them personally. I figure out about their families, their personal lives, and may they have 3 kids that they rarely get time with because they work late dealing with fallouts. If I can give that logistics coordinator 2 hours back every day because she doesn't have to deal with fallouts, then I'm winning.
Even just thinking about it, like the relationship piece and talking about their family, how much do you leverage like LinkedIn or their profile or anything they post, or geographical region? Do you dig in there much, or what? How much do you leverage that side of it?
Yeah, a lot of the conversation is going to be tailored based on their experience or their background. So I try to find some type of language or experience in there where I might be a little bit more strategic, where I might have to bring it down and be a little bit more transactional. But I try to find some commonality with them on a LinkedIn page, whether they went to a college nearby or they worked at a company that we've crossed paths with, whatever it may be. I try to find that connection and I bring that up. It might not be, obviously we're not in the door yet. We'll talk about getting in the door, but as we're building up to that point, trying to differentiate ourselves, I'm trying to find some type of commonality to build on with the relationship piece.
I love it, man. I think that's where a lot of people have challenges. Is I don't know. I feel like people don't use their brain, right? They have no sense of awareness of, oh, he's connected to that person. They live here. It looks like he went to college there in this city. He probably is moving back home. That's something I'm going to bring up. I'm going to use my brain and connect the dots here, like you mentioned earlier, and figure out. I think there's a value in that as a salesperson to connect those dots like you're talking about, where, a lot of people don't do that. And I think that the playing field is very easy when you connect some of those dots and make some of those connections. I also love if a guy's wearing a Minnesota Vikings hat in his LinkedIn profile. I mean, you bet your ass I am talking about the Minnesota Vikings and their 3-0 start or whatever it is. So, I think those are some of the things that people don't do that I think that we can really, hit on. Let's talk about this. We talked about the opening, getting them to a certain point, familiarity. What next? Like, I've been prospecting these people for 2-3 months, medium to large size shipper. What's next? What are next steps for us?
I mean, timing is obviously important, especially when you're prospecting. But it has to make sense for them, and the only way it's going to make sense is if you're willing to go above and beyond, where they're like, wow, we need to onboard. I know we only onboard once a year, but we're going to onboard this guy in March.
What do you mean?
It's doing what the competition is not willing to do. And I'll bring up one particular story. We do a lot of marketing. We do the handwritten letters. We talk about it all the time. We had a prospect, and let me back up. I would not do this unless they're a good fit and the partnership makes sense. You're
just not like sending like blast out to all these people.
So, the people we're pursuing are qualified, and that's who we're going to spend our time with. But, we had a great shipper out in Washington that we had been talking with. We had some great conversations, and, the conversation came up, us being in, Kentucky and Ohio, that, if you're willing to meet in person, then we'll bring you on board. And it was the first time I've ever done this, but flew out to Washington.
Yep.
To meet with their team.
Yeah.
And we had never ran a load with them.
Never did business.
And that may be something common at other companies, but for a small company, we were budgeting. This is a few years ago. We're like, oh boy,
$2, $3, $4 just to make the trip. Yeah.
So we flew out there. We broke bread, had a great conversation, learned more about their team, built some more relationships, and they're a great client today. So those are some of the things I mean by like going above and beyond.
Okay.
Some of these prospects may take 3 years to finally land.
Yeah.
Some may take 2 months, but if you're pursuing someone for that long and you're checking those boxes and building on the relationship, it's only a matter of time before you walk through the door.
We always see these stats, right? And it's like, the first, I forget, certain amount of percentage of salespeople quit after the first call.
Yep.
And a certain amount of salespeople quit after the second call. And I think like the most sales are made after like the 8th contact, right? The highest majority. And at that point, I think it's like 6% of salespeople are only willing to make 8 contacts to the same person.
Yep.
What is like your cadence, or what are you doing as far as, are you calling every week? Are you calling every other day? Are you emailing every other day with pictures of your dog? What are you doing there as far as like the cadence?
I think this goes back to the listening part. Like if they're like, Justin, like leave me alone for a month.
Sure.
I may send them an email with like a marketing update. Yeah. But I'm never bringing up business for at least a month. Okay. Because I want them to know that I heard you. Listen. And that's what I'm going to do. But if I'll have the conversation, are you okay if I send you anything that I think you'll find of value? Yeah. But I'm always trying to get commitments and build out a timeline on when I'm going to finally start working with them.
Love it.
So that the expectations are set. I'm getting commitments from them. And I'm moving them along through the sales process. So it all depends on the conversation and how much potential is there. Sure. But if I'm not reaching them and they have a commitment they gave me, I mean, I'll call every day. I'll call 3 times a day. Sure. I'll email multiple times a day. Hopefully I don't get a restraining order, but it usually works in our favor if we're that persistent.
Well, and I think like you said it, but I think even, you had the initial call, and saying something along the lines of, hey, do you mind if I follow up every month? Or what do you, like, even putting it back in their court, right? Like, what's a good cadence for us? Can I follow up monthly? Is it every quarter? What do you got? And you can follow up monthly, no problem. That's no problem at all. Yep. Okay, now I put that in my CRM. I put that in my, whatever it looks like as far as like the client file. And then what do you send to them? Like say somebody only wants quarterly emails. What do you do then?
Yeah, I want to know like what's important to you. Yeah, like, I don't want to send a bunch of fluff that you're just going to discard. Sure. Like what is most important to you that you're actually going to look at? Yeah. And so I'm always trying to, and if you're not getting contact at first, you need to try different things. Mm-hmm. If you're sending the same generic email, then you're always going to lose. Right. So I'm always trying to have that conversation to find out what's most important. Yeah. What are your biggest challenges? What hurdles can I remove from your team? Yeah. And once I know that, that's what I'm selling to, because I'm building that credibility where they're like, this guy actually knows what he's doing. We should probably bring him on because he's going to bring some value, as opposed to this guy that got grandfathered in and has been, hasn't moved the load in 2 months. Right. Those are real situations.
Well, I think like when we talk about like this episode's about differentiating yourself, right? And how do we do that? Well, listening to the client, making sure that, we're doing what they want us to do. And you said it, man, like bringing value, whether that's market insights or something that's happening in the shipping world, or, even this week there's a huge, rail strike up in the Northeast, and how does that impact their business? Yep. Right? Sending that valuable information to them. If they are moving drayage off the East Coast, right? Is this going to impact you? How does that look? I heard, I listened to a ton of Jeb Blunt. So do you. Something he said a while ago as far as cadence is differentiating yourself from being white noise like everybody else, or sticking out. And, every time he's talking, okay, I'm doing, the handwritten cards, the marketing packages, golf balls, whatever it is to stick out or differentiate yourself here, as opposed to being that white noise, on the left. Yeah.
And one thing I will add to that, since you mentioned it, but what is going to make you stick out? And I love virtual calls because it's about as face-to-face as you can get without flying to Washington. Sure. But was meeting with a national brand, a snack brand.
Yeah.
And the contact was remote. And her son walked in. He wanted his mom to play with Legos.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I do this like intentionally because I want to see their background, what's
Sure.
hanging on their wall, the picture of kids.
Yeah, Yankees hat or something like that. Yeah.
Yep. So her kid walks in with Legos wanting to play. She stiff arms him right out the door, and I put together a care package with a thank you card, and I included superhero Legos in that package.
Love it.
But if I would have had that call and I'm not paying attention to those types of things, how am I going to stick out as opposed to just another guy that I talked to the other day?
Well, I love it. I mean, it's like, okay, what is a Lego set? I know they're pretty expensive, but like this one's
like
probably
it was like 100 pieces, and it was like $2,000, I think.
Yeah,
So
seems about right.
$40.
Yeah, so you're spending $40, some postage, overall $50 ish, whatever, for a potential to stick out, especially for this opportunity. Right now, if the opportunity is, they only do a couple shipments a month, we're probably not sending a Lego set. But if the opportunity is there for potential partnership down the road, spend the $50, differentiate yourself. God, I love that, man. So we talked about a lot today, how to differentiate yourself from a prospecting side of it. Tune in for the next episode. We're going to talk about how to differentiate yourself from a client retention perspective and customers that we're actively building today. Actually building a true relationship with your clients, being able to take them out to a game or see them in their hometown or taking a tour of their facility. To me, maybe I'm a nerd, but I love that shit. I mean, to me, that's where you're building a real relationship, and to me, it's like not only relationship, but it's a friendship. Now, those clients, like when we look at it from a business perspective, they're not going anywhere.